From the Jennings Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University, this is Trailblazer Weekly, starring Carrick Segmeller and Drayson Ball.
It's showtime. Welcome inside the Jennings Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University. It's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's time for another edition of Trailblazer Weekly. He's Drayson Ball. I am Carrick Segmeller, and we are ready to rock and roll on this Wednesday afternoon. A loaded show today as we move into the month of March. I mean, and everybody knows what that means. It's tournament time, competition, the fight, the battle. You know what I'm talking about, right, Drayson? I mean, It's March. It's go time.
What's so special about March? It's like barely in between winter and spring. It's not quite getting warm yet in the rest of the state. I'm not sure what you're meaning.
I mean, there's the big college basketball competition, the event, you know, where everyone fills out the thing that looks like a family tree, and you know,
no, I'm not following you. That's just madness.
Exactly. He doesn't get it. All right, we got to move on. It's March. It's tourney time, and we got to move on to our Blazer Beat, let you know what's going on around campus. We'll give you all the Dixie State scores and news. We've got it right here for you inside Blazer Beat. Start with spring football. It is underway, and the second practice of the day was today over at Trailblazer Stadium. They will hold a 14-practice schedule. They'll go 2 weeks before spring break, 2 weeks after, and it will all culminate on April 4th with the spring game at Trailblazer Stadium. Men's basketball. They finished the regular season with a big 82-60 win at Westminster, clinching a share of the RMAC regular season title, and then opened the RMAC tournament as the overall 1 seed with an 84-71 victory over number 8 seed Regis last night inside the Burns Arena, which means the Trailblazers will host the semifinal and the final round, the championship round of the RMAC tournament inside the Burns Arena. Those 2 games will take place on Friday and Saturday. Colorado School of Mines and South Dakota Mines will play at 5 p.m. on Friday. Dixie State will host the 4 seed Colorado Mesa at 7 p.m. on Friday night. The 2 winners will advance to play in the championship round on Saturday night at 7 p.m. On the women's side, the Trailblazers were hoping to get a win over Westminster to end the regular season on Friday. Gave it a valiant effort, had a lead in the fourth quarter, but fell 72-69 at Westminster. Should note the Trailblazers had 3 incredible looks at a 3 to tie with under 10 seconds to go, but it just was not meant to be. They would not stay down, but no big deal. Trailblazers go in as the 7 seed in the RMAC tournament and head out for their quarterfinal round to Gunnison, Colorado, and claim a 65-60 an upset victory over the Mountaineers in Gunnison inside Paul Wright Gymnasium, and they advance to play number 3, guess who, Westminster, on Friday at 7:30 p.m. in Grand Junction, Colorado. Overall top seed Colorado Mesa is the host there. Now wrapping up the Blazer Beat with the softball results from over the weekend. They headed to MSU Denver for a pod series. 2 games against Black Hills State, 2 games against MSU Denver. Won both games against Black Hills State. However, dropped both games against MSU Denver. Tough stuff there. You'd like to have those games back, but you got to move forward. Trailblazers did drop all the way from number 11 out of the top 25. They'll be at UCCS later this weekend trying to bounce back.
Yeah, tough weekend for them. Obviously, you know, a tough team against MSU Denver. You feel like you should go and have the advantage, and you just slip up a couple of times there in those kind of unique pod series, but I think they'll be able to bounce back.
Will indeed. Let's move on to our player of the week, and we got to go back to basketball. I should warn you, this is going to be pretty much, there goes my microphone. This is going to be pretty much an all basketball episode. I mean, both teams get wins in the RMAC tournament. Men's team is hosting. We got to go with basketball, and that is our Campus Store Player of the Week. It's Hunter Schofield. You could go probably Hunter or Jack Pagankoff any week with this, but Hunter had a monster week. Scored almost 50 points between the 2 games, between the Westminster and the game last night against Regis. 24.5 points per game. He 6.5 rebounds per game. He also shot at almost 70% from the field. And last night, It was 8 of 11, I think, from the free throw line, including making a stretch of making 5 in a row that was in a critical spot for Dixie State. So Hunter Schofield, our Campus Store Player of the Week.
Yeah, 24 points and 8 rebounds last night. He also had 2 assists and 3 blocks, so he was huge all over the floor last night and really made a difference for them, not just with the free throws you mentioned late in that game. He was a consistent force. They could dump it down low to him oftentimes, and he'd be able to get a bucket there in that game at crucial points. And so, no doubt, Player of the Week for this week.
You just love seeing Hunter Schofield and Jack Pagankoff the way that they're just on the same page.
Yeah.
Jack knows where he's going to be at all times. And some of the passes that he dropped in last night, I mean, we're talking like 30 feet away from the bucket and dropped a lob pass in over 2 defenders' hands on a dime right into Schofield's hands for layup, and it was incredible.
Yeah, they were kind of really overplaying Schofield. They really wanted to kind of keep the ball out of his hands. They were playing over the top, and a lot of times you just see Dixie State just drop it over the top there. No one was coming from the help side to back, to help on the backside to prevent that pass, and then he was just laying it up and in with really no one to contest him because that's the way the defense was playing him. Excellent executed offensively for Coach John Judkins, and then obviously Pagankoff and Schofield was kind of the tandem there that really made that effective.
Congrats to Hunter Schofield, our Campus Store Player of the Week. Continue to keep an eye on that and the individual performances each and every week to see who we will select as our Campus Store Player of the Week on Trailblazer Weekly. Let's move on into our question of the day. That's how we end this first segment each and every week. And the burning question, I think, as we've talked about it before the show today, is what are we going to talk about? And again, with the basketball wins, I think you got to focus on that. And a couple of weeks ago, we were sitting here saying, well, what happened to basketball in Colorado? And now we're saying both basketball teams played great basketball last night. Women's team was incredible in Gunnison, Colorado. So now I think the question of the day today is, what stood out? There's so many good things that you can pick from, but what stood out in these men's and women's basketball victories in the quarterfinals of the RMAC tournament?
Yeah, what stood out to me was just the way that both these teams were poised in the most important games of their season so far. I mean, obviously, Dixie State, the men's basketball team, they are favored. They're the host school. You should win that game, but it doesn't mean anything that you should win. That doesn't mean anything when you get into tournament time and into playoff time. The games you should win are usually the ones you don't win or have struggles with at times. And the Trailblazers in this game, the men's team did struggle a little bit at times. They kind of had a lead, and then they lost the lead there kind of late in the second half, but then they were able to regain it, obviously, and win by 13. But what stood out to me was just their poise, and they made winning plays at that crucial time of the game when they were tied there. It was like 64, 65. I can forget the score. But in the final 3 minutes of that game, which is us in the business like to call the final 3 minutes, final 4 or 5 minutes, winning time.
The final countdown.
Right, exactly. We call that winning time. And for Dixie State in quote-unquote winning time, meaning the final 3 minutes and 8 seconds, 17 of 18 from the free throw line. That was huge down the stretch. Oftentimes in those close games, in those clutch moments, those clutch games, it's won or lost at the free throw line. They withstood 28 points from Brian Dawson, who had 19 points in the first half. They limited him to just 9 points in the second half. They made someone else beat them, and then they out-rebounded Regis and got better, more efficient shots than Regis did, especially with, like we mentioned, Hunter Schofield. They played very well. 50% from the field, 46% from 3 on 6 of 13 shooting, and Regis just 37% from the field and 28% shooting after coming off at a tremendous three-point shooting performance against Dixie State a couple weeks ago.
And tell me I was not the only one inside that building thinking when Brian Dawson was going off. That was a career high for him, by the way, for the Rangers. Tell me I was not the only one thinking about what Raquan Mitchell of New Mexico Highlands did to the Trailblazers in the 2019 RMAC tournament when he came in and dropped 40-plus points and led the Cowboys to an upset victory over Dixie State. When that game got close and when the Rangers tied the game and Dawson's still going off, I'm sitting there at the table going, this can't happen again. And it's like you said, Dixie State persevered. They were able to make the winning plays down the stretch that they needed to. Andre Wilson had a huge three in the left corner right after he checked back into the game, kind of a catch and shoot. They broke the press. He nailed the three, and that kind of got Dixie State going the other way. Pagankoff had a big three from the right wing. Just what you love to see is the team not backing down, and that was a difference between here and the game in Denver a couple of weeks ago, was the Trailblazers were not going to lose that basketball
Frank
game.
staying huge in that game
Frank
as well.
staying
Had
huge.
three or four from downtown. Didn't score a whole lot of points. I think he was just in double figures, but really huge in that game, especially late.
If Frank Stain can give you 10, 11, 12, 13 points a game like he is right now, though, I mean, that's all you can ask him to do. It'd be huge.
He doesn't need the ball to be effective. He's a catch and shoot guy. If you can get him in open situations, he can knock down those threes. That's huge for the Trailblazers.
Let's talk about our women's win now, 65-60 over Western Colorado, and let's open that up with our Rock Canyon Bank by the numbers. We're flipping the script. I'm going to do the by the numbers today. As the Trailblazers women's basketball team headed to Gunnison, Colorado, and picked up a 65-60 win over Western Colorado, and here's your by the numbers. Entering last night's game, Western Colorado had not lost a game all year at home. They were 11-0. Trailblazers dealt the Mountaineers their first home loss of the season in what was probably the most important game they played inside their home gym that season. Other numbers, Dixie State trailed 60-53 at the 7:49 mark of the fourth quarter. They called timeout. The game was slipping away. They called timeout. From that point, after the timeout, Western Colorado did not score. Went the final 7 minutes and 49 seconds scoreless. 0 for 11 from the field. They're over the final 7:49, and 3 turnovers in that stretch as well. Dixie State closed the game on a 12-0 run to win 65-60.
Those are great numbers. That's a lot. Going into that game, I mean, you knew it was going to be tough. You wanted to try to avoid Mesa at all costs, and they did that. But you didn't really have much of a break playing Western Colorado, especially on the road against them. And they were tremendous in that game, especially in that fourth quarter. That's not a game that Dixie State typically has won a lot in this season. Obviously, they've had some struggles being able to hold off opponents. They had a 2-point lead last weekend against Westminster in the fourth quarter. Westminster ended up winning that game. They had a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter over Mesa a couple of weeks ago. They had a 6-point lead with 4 minutes to go against South Dakota School of Mines earlier in the season. They would tie that game, go into overtime, and eventually lose in overtime. And then had a 1-point lead. The very first RMAC game of this season against Westminster had a 1-point lead with 1:20 to go, and then Westminster finished on a 5-0 run. So that is the game. They've struggled in those late game situations again in winning time. They've struggled to be able to close out opponents and win those types of games. It's good to see them be able to do that against a team that was undefeated at home and a team that was giving you a lot of pressure. You had a lead in that game and slipped away, but you were able to regain it and hold on to the victory.
Well, especially, they dealt with some adversity right from the start. And we don't want to make a huge deal of this, but, Dixie State they're wearing their black uniforms, their road black uniforms, and the numbers are just kind of a gray outline. There's no fill. It's just the black uniform behind it. They got whistled for a technical foul before the game even started for a uniform violation, which, there is something written in the rule book about uniforms, and the referees, I guess, deemed that that rule was violated. So Dixie State started the game down 2-0, but that helped with some extra motivation. But then after that, it was a game where Dixie State really controlled throughout most of it. It was tied going into the fourth quarter, and then Western went on a big run in the fourth quarter, and you thought, okay, here we go. And then, just like you're talking about, the Trailblazers, for not necessarily the first time all season, but the first time in recent parts of the season, that the Trailblazers were able to call the timeout, to slow it down, and say we got to focus defensively, and then let that bleed into the offensive side. And they made big shots. Allie Franks had a tough shot in transition. Chesney Stevens had a tough bucket inside. Kesley Stevenson, who was nails from beyond the arc in the first half, made some clutch free throws down the stretch to put the game out of reach. She finished with 22 points, tying her career high. And lots of different people contributed. London Pavlica played the entire 40 minutes, never came out. She didn't have the most, gaudy numbers, but when she's out there, that she's one play away from making the play of the game. And it was just incredible to see them persevere and fight through and get what I'm going to call the biggest win of head coach J.D. Gusson's tenure here at Dixie State.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And just the way that they were able to execute in the second half. I mean, they got to the free throw line 13 times in the second half compared to just 4 for Western Colorado. So that was really where the game was won and lost. They were able to control the tempo. They didn't really make a whole lot of mistakes that we've seen against, for example, Colorado Mesa. They had a 17-point lead, and it just felt like they're just crumbling. They were just, maybe the moment was, I don't want to say too big for them, but maybe they kind of realized at that point, this is the number one team in the conference, and we got a 17-point lead, and maybe it was just a little bit too big for them in that moment. Not the case last night against the 2-seeded Western Colorado, and they were poised and executed well down the stretch. A great win for them on the road.
Huge. Again, they will play on Friday at Colorado Mesa, but they'll play in-state rival Westminster College. We're going to have much more about this win and looking ahead throughout the weekend. In the next segment, we got to take a timeout, but when we come back, Dixie State women's basketball head coach J.D. Gustin will join us on the phone to break this thing down. They're not going to come home. They were in Gunnison. They're going to stop in Grand Junction. They're going to stay there, and he will join us on the phone next to break down the win and looking ahead at this weekend. Interview with Coach Gustin coming up next on Trailblazer Weekly.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this. I need a one dance. And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
Today. Good. I'm here to talk about how with technology you can make amazing worlds. Come with me. My team and I groomed the Halo world to life.
Is that you?
That is me. I wasn't a math genius and I knew nothing about coding. But you guys do. You guys have the power to change things.
I want your job.
I want you to have my job.
There is a place where rocks bleed and nature blushes on a battlefield green with envy, where dimples determine destiny and a tiny wooden T holds the outcome in the balance. There is a place where friends are opponents and opponents are friends, where the prize is elusive, the conquest is captivating, and the score isn't settled till the drinks are down. There is a place.
Radio Dixie 91.3. Young the Giant, something to believe in.
John, what song do you want to hear?
Next, Miss Calindris. You'll be on the SWAT team, the SWAT team.
Did a fantastic situation. I was going to talk to you last time.
Honorary Forest Ranger Betty White here, lending a hand to my dear friend Smokey Bear. Because for 75 years, he's only said,
only you can prevent wildfires.
But there's a lot more to say. Like, if you park your car on tall, dry grass, the hot exhaust pipe can start a wildfire. So keep the animals safe, especially the cute shirtless one. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention.
Today's show is brought to you by the Dixie State Campus Store, the official source for DSU Trailblazer clothing, providing students with textbooks as well as educational office, and art supplies. Located on the second floor of the Gardner Center, the Dixie State Campus Store, proud sponsor of Trailblazer Weekly.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
Let's go. Take the ball out there.
There is a place where young and old make connections, where kids feel like grown-ups, and grown-ups feel like kids. There is a place where beauty arises in contrast, where wonder is universal, and laughter second nature. There is a place where friends find a future, families find each other, and feelings find their home. There is a place.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this. I need a one dance. And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not as they seem.
Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating, funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife.
Lives of great men all remind us that our lives can be sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing over life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate. Still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay? Just go to the site.
Welcome inside Studio A, Ginny's Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University. It is Trailblazer Weekly here on this Wednesday afternoon. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but practice was just finishing. They were trying to get the phone call connected. It just kept going straight to voicemail. Would not work. That's the joys of live television every once in a while. I tell you what I think it is that we initiate the phone calls out of a computer from Skype, actually. And we tried both Coach Gustin and Coach Yazzie, and I think whoever their phone carrier is thinks it's like a robocall. Would not allow the call to go through. So we are disheartened and dismayed But we are not done. We will discuss this on our own, and we will get Coach Gustin on the show in studio next week.
Yeah. I mean, we'll just be able to, it'll just give us a little bit more time to talk a little bit more about this this impressive victory, this women's basketball victory on the road. And obviously, there's a whole lot to talk about that we did have a chance in our opening segment. And so we got a few minutes here to be able to really dive deep into this segment and kind of talk about what it was they were able to do to get this victory. I mean, obviously, you go on the road and you're the 7th seed and you're the underdog. I mean, this is what March is all about. And I know we joked earlier about the show about not knowing the significance of what happens in March, but that is the significance of what happens in March, is that you can go on the road, throw out the records, throw out the home records, throw out your previous matchup history, throw it all out, because it's one game on the road to determine who advances. And that's what the beauty about this kind of setup is, about these tournaments, these conference tournaments and the national title tournaments, is that one team can get hot, even though they may not be favored or they may be the underdog. They can get hot. They can put together 40 minutes of good basketball, and they can beat a team that's supposed to be favored coming into that game. That's what Dixie State did last night, was being able to go on the road, remain poised, use some negative adversity as positive motivation to get them a victory against a very good Western Colorado team on the road.
Yeah, we saw that last year in the men's game with New Mexico Highlands coming in, bring that game up again when the Cowboys came in and they got hot. And wait, what seed were they? The 7th seed.
Right.
And they went on the road and beat a top 2 seed, the 2 seed here in St. George. And then remind me what happened did New Mexico Highlands win?
Yeah, they
the
won
tournament.
They won on to win the whole darn thing. So they got hot at the right time, and maybe that's a good sign for Dixie State getting hot at the right time.
We've seen it very recently in involving Dixie State, and the women's team obviously would be on the other side of that coin this time. But we said, and we talked about this going in, that this Trailblazer team could beat anybody in the conference if they can get hot and be consistent with their shots. And if they play defense like they did last night, then they will be just fine. And one big, we talked about it last segment as well. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we can actually show you some highlights and stuff for your TV and internet viewers now. Kesley Stevenson absolutely set the tone for this Dixie State team. As you mentioned, some adversity in the uniform violation and starting down 2-0 before the game even started. The Trailblazer, Maddie Loftus hit a 3, and then Kesley Stevenson came out and bang, bang, hit 2 more threes. And in fact, in the first quarter, and then 2 more in the second quarter. She hit 4 threes in the first half, had 16 points. One of them that you're going to see is the very last one here, right before the halftime break. Here in just a moment. She is from the logo, from the left side, the Armac logo. I mean, this is probably close to a 40-foot three-point shot right before halftime, and she splashed it in. And that set the tone for the Trailblazers. She was a little more quiet offensively. She's one of the top defenders in the RMAC. But she was a little more quiet offensively in the second half. But Kesley Stevenson set the tone for the Trailblazers offensively in the first half and really set them up to win this game.
Yeah, 22 points on 6 of 11 from the field, 4 of 5 from downtown, and a perfect 6 of 6 from the free throw line. And that's really, we've talked about Kesley Stevenson on and off this whole season. She was kind of the first, maybe 15 games of the season, kind of first half of the season, was kind of struggling a little bit. We thought we may have expected more out of her and her performance, and she wasn't shooting the 3 ball particularly well. She wasn't maybe doing a whole lot of the scoring that we thought she might have been able to do in her junior season, but she's really come on these last 10, 15 games of the season, the last half of the season, where really she's been able to shoot the ball a little bit better, become a little bit more calm, and really was a huge factor in that game last night, getting him off to a great start. And then the 6 of 6 free throws is always critical, especially in these kinds of games where it's often, like I said, one from the free throw line. That was huge for me, because if you can get that kind of performance out of Kesley Stevenson, you know that you can rely on Maddie Loftus. She can get you a couple of threes. She can get to the rim on occasion a few times per game. You have Allie Franks, who is, maybe one of your best scorers, even though she had 12 points last night, but she's capable of going off for 24, 25, 26 points on any given night. You had London Paviga, who, isn't necessarily your scorer, but she can create a lot for you last night. She had 5 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. One of the maybe most London Paviga numbers or stats we've kind of come used to.
And I think I said it wasn't gaudy numbers before the break. I mean, that's a pretty impressive stat line.
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive stat line. And
just a ho-hum night.
And for
London
the casual
Hamilton.
fan, they're going to look, oh, she had 5 points. She really didn't do that much. But she played 40 minutes. She played the entire game, had 8 rebounds and 5 assists. And, yeah, she did have a few turnovers there. But, the good thing about London Pavliga is no matter what she's doing on the court, she's maybe going to turn the ball over maybe more than a lot. But she does have the ball in her hands the entire time. I mean, she brings it up the court, she gets into the offense, she has the ball in her hand. You're going to live with a few turnovers here and there because she has the ability to create plays for others, get the offensive rebound, put it back, find an open player for an assist. She can make a shot. She can shoot the three at a decent rate. She can get to the rim. She's just very athletic, and she does so much that she can create plays for others and for herself that you're going to live with a few turnovers here and there. But otherwise, excellent game all the way around.
So it was the offense that set the tone in the first half and then kept pace in the third quarter. Then the defense is what turned the game back in Dixie State's favor in the fourth quarter. And I talked with Coach Gustin on the phone last night, and I was calling the men's game last night, so it was happening at the same time. So I didn't really get to watch a lot of the women's game as it was happening. I've since gone back and at least watched the fourth quarter because I wanted to see this run that they went on. But I asked Coach Gustin, because looking at the box score, you look at it, and the numbers aren't that different between Dixie State and Western Colorado. I mean, there's a lot of similarities. In fact, Dixie State was out-rebounded and still won this game. So I said, Coach, honestly, where was this game won? And he didn't even have to take any time out at all. And he went back and he said, we were down by 7 with 7.5 minutes to go. We called a timeout and said, we've got to be better defensively. We've got to be composed. Let's finish this game. That's been our goal. And he said it was the defensive end where this game was won. We mentioned it in our By the Numbers feature. We'll mention it again. Dixie State held Western Colorado scoreless over the final 7 minutes and 49 seconds of the game. It was a 60-53 deficit. Trailblazers went on a 12-0 run to win, and most of that was because of the defensive effort. They could not, the Mountaineers, could not breathe. They missed a few open looks, but for the most part, they were contested looks, and Dixie State won the game on the defensive end, and it was them who, like the men's team in Salt Lake City on Friday night when they clinched the RMAC title and went in and had a big celebration in the locker room, the women's team was able to go in and have their celebration in the locker room this time around with water bottles flying around everywhere. You get to see it right here. Coach Gustin saying, oh, it's a brand new suit. Don't soak it. Oh, well, we just won a huge game. So, big-time stuff from our women's basketball team.
I think Coach Gustin, and unfortunately, again, if you're just joining us, not able to have him on the phone as we had originally planned in the segment, but I think he would tell you he'll have to buy a new suit. He'll just to have that celebration in the locker room. Maybe next game, if they continue to win, he'll have that.
That's what it takes.
If that's what it takes, he'll definitely trade those suits for victories in the RMAC tournament and even beyond in the NCAA tournament should they make it.
Head over to the Grand Junction Mall and find a new suit, Coach, because if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Trailblazers is a huge win. They will play Westminster College on Friday in Grand Junction. That's the number 3 seed Griffins, the number 7 seed Trailblazers, and Dixie State going to try to keep the Cinderella run going through the RMAC tournament. We'll keep you up to date on that throughout the weekend. Stay tuned to DixieStateAthletics.com. You can follow the stats, the live video, and we'll have the recap once the game is over as well. We got to take a timeout. When we come back, we continue talking basketball, and we bring in, on the men's side, the reigning RMAC Player of the Year. Yes, Mr. Jack Pagankoff himself, the man, the myth, the legend, will join us next on Trailblazer Weekly.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
There is a place where young and old make connections, where kids feel like grown-ups, and grown-ups feel like kids. There is a place where beauty arises in contrast, where wonder is universal, and laughter second nature. There is a place where friends find a future, families find each other, and feelings find their home. There is a place.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this.
I need a one dance.
And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not as they seem.
Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating, funeral marches to the grave. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife.
Lives of great men all remind us that our lives can be sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing over life's solemn moon, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate. Still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay? Just go to the site.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly on this Wednesday afternoon. It is all basketball all the time because we are right in the midst of the RMAC tournament. We just talked women's game. Now we're going to transition back to the men's side as the Trailblazers now hosting the final two rounds of the RMAC tournament, the semifinals Friday night and the finals Saturday night inside the Burns Arena. And here to help us break it all down is the senior guard, Jack Pagankoff, the RMAC Player of the Year. Jack, thanks so much for stopping by in between practice and class. You know, as a student athlete, you have a lot of things pulling at your time, so we appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We had you on the show in November. You just had the first triple-double in program history. Fast forward to now, you continue to put up dazzling numbers throughout the year. You're the RMAC Player of the Year, and I know for someone as humble as you, you're going to probably deflect this praise, but that's okay because you do so good at making your teammates better and distributing the ball. But first of all, congratulations. Second of all, you know, what was your first thought when you saw that it was announced? And I'm sure that you knew you were on the radar, but what was your first thought when you saw, man, I'm the RMAC Player of the Year?
Well, first off, I'll take all the praise you'll give me. But I thought it was cool. It was one of those things where, like, I kind of knew there was a chance, but we got first in the conference and we're hosting, and we definitely don't want to lose that first game like we did last year. So that's where my focus was at. But to still get the honors before the game, it felt good, and I just knew that the other team probably knew that too, and they were gonna play even harder.
Yeah. I mentioned the triple double and then all the time in between, and now it's not the cherry on top because the season's far from over right now. But senior season, what would you have told me if I could have go back in time, pull you aside, and during conditioning, during those early September, late September, early October moments where you're just dying in there. That's all you're doing is conditioning.
Yeah.
If I could have pulled you aside and said, hey, conference champs, going to be hosting. Player of the Year, what would have been your reaction?
I wouldn't have been surprised, but it would have been one of those like, all right, this is what we're doing now for that to be the result later. So it's just a work in progress. So that was kind of always the plan. It was always our goal. It was one of those things where if you stick to it and don't look too far ahead, you know you have a good shot at it. And I think we did that. So.
Jack, let's take a look back quickly and just kind of reflect on this senior season that you've had. Obviously, that we mentioned the triple-double, the RMAC Player of the Year, 14 and a half points per game, six assists and 6 rebounds per game. Just an incredible stat line. As you look back on your senior year with the team that you've been able to kind of grow with and develop and win a conference championship with, what's going to stand out for you as either an individual or as a team that you're going to be able to look back on and say and have positive thoughts about this season?
I guess the main thing I'll probably remember the conference championship the most because we had that slide a little bit right before we played Westminster, and that was kind of a big deal for us. Kind of had to look in the mirror like we know we're better than dropping these games. We still have a chance to win conference. We got to come together and do it. And the postseason's starting. It's time to get on a roll. So how are we going to figure that out? I think I'll remember that the most. But other than that, most of the time it's just hanging out in the locker room after practice. Nobody's in a rush to get anywhere. Sometimes we'll just go out to eat after. It's kind of fun, and just all the things you talk about there, like something just carries on. You got jokes for days and they never go away, stuff like that.
And talk a little bit about. I mean, it's easy to see for anyone who watches you play and watches Dixie State play. It's easy to see how and why you are the leader to this team. I mean, last night's game, it just seems like you're the one. You want the ball in the clutch situation. You want to bring the ball up the floor and get the offense going. You want the ball in your hands in those situations. How important is that for you to kind of take that leadership role and be able to say to your teammates, I got this, and let's go?
I think it's extremely important. I think that's one of my strengths. So if I kind of shy away from it, I'm not going to play good. I'm either going to have the ball in my hand and make a play, or if I shy away from it, I'm going to do nothing for sure. So I have to kind of assert myself. And I'm the point guard of the team, so I have the ball in my hand a lot. In crunch time, I can't run away from it. I got to go to it and be more of who I am throughout the game. Just really get deeper into myself as like, what are my strengths? I think that's my strength, so I'm gonna go to it at the end of the game.
Chatting with Dixie State senior point guard Jack Pagankoff, the RMAC Player of the Year, and Jack, I think a lot of people look at this situation here, this team we've got this year, and say, we knew Jack Pagankoff was a good player, good point guard last year as a junior. But, man, as a senior, he has blown us away. What would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned from your time as a junior to this season? I mean, what's been the one thing that's really helped you make the most improvement?
There's a lot of things. It would be hard to narrow it down to just one. I think the biggest thing is, first off, it's a team game, so the numbers are cool, but you don't have the numbers unless you're playing well with your teammates. So being able to integrate my own game with their games and be able to hit points in the season where we're just clicking and everything's smooth so everybody feels good, that's when I feel like I play my best. And I think that happened more so this year than last year, and especially being my second year with Juddy, we talk so much more than we did last year, even to the point where he'll say he wants something, I'll say I want something, and we both know he's the coach and it's going to go his way, but he respects my opinion enough to say, okay, if you really feel that way, we can go with it. And that relationship with him and my teammates helps the most.
And we've noted that same thing in game. Right? You get the game that's happening on the floor, and then if you really pay attention, you get to see the game within the game. And it's fun to see you communicate with Coach Judkins, and you can see that. It's a two-way line of communication. It's not just a coach telling a player, hey, this is what we're going to do. And it's been fun to watch that this year. In fact, we noticed that a little bit last night. We'll transition into talking about last night. You talked about, it's always important. You got to get that first tournament game out of the way, call it nerves, call it jitters, whatever. It didn't seem like there were too many of those last night, although late in the second half it ends up tied, and then you guys go on a little run to win the game. What was the difference down the stretch for you guys as we just talk about getting the win over Regis last night? Of course, it was a team you lost to in Colorado a couple of weeks ago, so that played into it, I'm sure. But when they tied it up, I think it was 58-58 late in that second half, and what was the vibe around the team, and what was said to help you guys kick it back into gear and get that win?
When they tied it, nobody was down. Nobody was like, oh, here we go. But my mindset was, all right, we need to get a bucket now. We need a big bucket here, and then we need to stop. And they were pressuring us the whole game, which was tough. So they ran a press like they're normal. They doubled me, and Frank caught it, and I was able to break free, which we don't do too much. And he threw it a little bit in front of me, and I was like, oh, no. But I batted it down, and then I saw Dre wide open in the corner, and he's made big shots, well, in practice all year, but now it's crunch time, and he's hitting them all the time. So I saw him open in the corner, and he knocked it down. And when he hit that, it was like, okay, we're not fazed by this. And then they still hung around a bit, but we knew from then on nothing was going to faze us in those moments.
Do you remember who made the next three after that three?
Was it me?
It was you.
We were
on the right wing.
Yeah,
and I'm
he went
here to
under
tell
the
you,
screen. Yeah,
you let that thing fly, and right as you did, Coach Judkins went like this.
That's what I heard.
And then it went in, and he said, okay.
Yeah.
That's it. It was one of those, you take the shot, and it's early in the shot clock. Okay.
We're up 4, and if you get separation to 7, 4 and 7's a big difference. That's 3 possessions, and we could still be up, even if they score all 3 possessions. So he went under the screen. I was like, all right, I'm taking this. Don't go under the screen. So it worked out.
Definitely another one of those game within the game fun things that just notice.
You always love those. Those are the best shots when it's like, oh, don't take that. Oh, okay, good job, you made it. Good shot or whatever. So it's always fun to have those moments and situations. I'm glad you mentioned Jack. You talked about the defensive pressure that they were putting on, not just you, but the entire team last night, especially on you. It seemed like they wanted the ball out of your hands. They tried to double you. They wouldn't try to let you get the ball to bring it up the court. When you got across half court, it seemed like they were throwing double teams at you all night. How key was it for you? I mean, even still, you led the team in assists with 5 last night. How important and how key was it for you to be able to recognize they're trying to get the ball out of my hands, and because they're double teaming me, that means someone else is open. You were able to find them a lot last night. How important was it for you to be able to read that and be able to execute in that manner?
I mean, to be able to read what they were in is not the hard part. It's mostly being able to what you want your guys to be in. Because if the ball's not in my hand, I still got to be in control in some way. So what sets do I call? Who's on the court? What are their strengths? Hunter had a great game last night, and when there's outside pressure, the inside's usually wide open. So I was telling him he's going to get a lot of buckets tonight, and it worked out. So when I was getting rid of the ball, a lot of them weren't assist passes. A lot of them were kind of find the open man, and then one guy had to guard 2, and he either shoots it or passes it, and a lot of times he would kick it. So I probably maybe had more hockey assists than actual assists, but that was the biggest thing, was kind of looking past the pressure. Maya used to say that a lot last year, like look past it, don't let it look like it's phasing you at all. But don't lose control of the game, even if you don't have the ball in your hands.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, you talk about, the hockey assists. I mean, you guys assisted on 15 of the 27 made field goals last night, so much more than half or 50% in that regard. Obviously, Mesa coming in next. You guys are at home. Kind of a little bit of a rivalry there with Colorado Mesa. Obviously, you want to continue. What's the key for you guys going forward? You're here playing in front of your home crowd on a weekend. It's going to be a packed house. And what's going to be the key for you guys going forward in your pursuit to win the conference tournament?
The key is us for sure. You can throw schemes, whatever plays they run, how you want to stop them, but it all comes down to who you are as a team, and that's what we've been talking about in practice. If we can stick to who we are, do that really well, they're going to have problems with us. We're the number 1 team. We beat them twice already this year. This game's going to be harder than those. It's a playoff game, but we got to become more ingrained in our strengths, and we've been doing that, and so it's feeling good right now.
You heard it here, folks. He's Jack Pagankoff, senior point guard and leader of this Dixie State Trailblazers squad, the RMAC Player of the Year, and I almost forgot to even bring this up, single-season assist leader. Set the single-season assist record earlier this year, and you wouldn't expect anything less from Jack, and just how good and how well he gets others involved, and this has been a fun team to watch this year, and we're excited to have 2 more home games, and wish you all the best of luck this weekend.
Thank you.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we will wrap up the show and kind of preview these games that we're looking at coming into this weekend as the Trailblazers, both teams, trying to keep their tournament runs going and trying to play their way into the NCAA tournament as well. We'll break that all down next on Trailblazer Weekly.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother. You, your football buddy, your football buddy. You, The boss is boss. If 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, that means it could be you, your barber, your barber's barber.
Nice work.
Thanks.
You, your plumber,
Breathe right into your foot.
your plumber's masseuse.
Yes.
You, your dog walker,
On your left.
your cat jogger. Or you, your co-pilot, your co-pilot's co-pilot. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org to know where you stand.
I have a backpack.
请所有的同学回到座位哈。3。
Kevin, get our curve reader. And there's the bottom.
Does this one have more water?
Hey, Kevin, you thinking about retirement?
I'd love to, but I'm pretty busy with all this.
Yeah. Hey, let's meet our retirement coach, Avo. A is for taking action.
Not anxiety?
No, Kevin, you're gonna be fine.
You sing?
Barely. V is for variety.
And you dance?
Sort of. Come on. O is for optimize your savings.
Let Avo lead the way.
Visit aceyourretirement.org today.
Nice.
Thanks.
Where do you find the titans of classical music in St. George? Classical music on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM. Where do you find the legends of jazz? Evenings on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
Our hearts are made stronger by how we treat others.
Put her there.
The light you share can impact those around you, but so can the darkness.
Later, twerps. Did Pete saying mean things bother you?
So when you reach out to another person, take a moment to consider how they will feel and let your heart be the key to making a difference. Because of you, someone's entire day, year, or even life can change.
In every heart, there's hope.
This graph is square.
Pretty close.
Artemisia is all the sagebrush, but there's your needle and thread. Which one is this?
Come down. Turn, please. Right. Sodium carbonate.
Today's show is brought to you by Rock Canyon Bank, serving Utah businesses and agriculture for over 25 years, with locations in Pleasant Grove, Orem, Provo, Spanish Fork, Fillmore, and at 94 East Tabernacle, right here in St. George. Rock Canyon Bank, back to banking. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly, wrapping things up here on this Wednesday afternoon. Carrick Segmiller, Drayson Ball with you inside the CEC TV studios. Another show has come and gone, but before we totally wrap this thing up, we've got to give you what we think our Trailblazer Weekly Game of the Week is, and we thought this week, I mean, you got two huge basketball games, and one team at home trying to play for a conference RMAC tournament title at home, one on the road. How do you determine which is more important, which game's bigger? You could look at it probably from one angle and say, well, right now the men's team has probably, you hesitate to use the word lock, but it's probably done enough already as the 3 seed in the latest region rankings again. They're probably not falling out of the top 8, and so this men's team is probably in the tournament already. For the women's team, if they want to get in the NCAA tournament, they got to win two more games. It's simple, right? Just go out and win 2 more games, and you're in the NCAA tournament. So, I mean, different circumstances, but the same semifinal round. And I think you look at it and say, it can be games of the week, Dixie State in the RMAC tournament.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, each of these games is crucial in their own way. I mean, Dixie, the men's team, obviously wants to be able to, win the conference tournament here at home. I mean, they should have that expectation here at home, playing teams that you've been able to beat once or twice throughout the season. So I think you have to believe that they want to be able to win this one and expect to, maybe more so than the women. Not saying the women don't expect to win this game or this tournament, but certainly the expectations are there for the men. On the women's side, however, I mean, this is going to be extremely crucial because, the women maybe are on that kind of bubble area where, right now they may not be into the NCAA tournament at the end of the season, the national tournament, and a win or 2 wins or 3 wins, if you win the whole thing, obviously if you win the tournament, that's an automatic bid, you're already in. But if you win a game or 2 here and there, it might be just enough to get you in over someone else who may not have won those same games in the tournament. So for them, they're not only playing for their conference tournament lives, they're playing for their NCAA tournament lives game by game, because as of right now, maybe not enough to get into the tournament if it were to end today, the season. And so for them, it's got to be a huge, huge game against an in-state rival. And what better way to end it against Westminster? Not end it, but what better way to continue your tournament against Westminster, a team who you quite frankly should have probably beat twice earlier in the season, one at home. I mentioned these numbers earlier. But first RMAC game of the season, they had a 1-point lead with 1:20 to go. They lost that game after a 5-0 Westminster run to finish that game. And then just last week, they had a 2-point lead in the fourth quarter over Westminster with under 3 to go. And so you were, right there in those situations where a couple of points here and there go your way. You win those 2 games, and so tough to beat a team 3 times. Westminster's going to have to do that against the Trailblazers, who are coming off a huge win.
Yeah, I look at these 2 games for the men's and the women's team, and it's opposites. Dixie State, the men's team, has defeated Colorado Mesa twice, and now Mesa gets a 3rd chance at the Trailblazers in the RMAC tournament. And on the women's side, Westminster has 2 very close wins over the Trailblazers this season, a 4-point win on the road and then a 3-point win at home, and now you get to go play them on a neutral site. And if you're Dixie State, you're hoping, hey, maybe the 3rd time will be the charm. We can go and we can look at the tape and say, we had leads in both of these games. What did we do? Oh, just those things? We just fixed those things? Okay. And you go into a matchup like that, and I think the same could be said for our men's team. I think when you're the team that's already won both games over a team in the season, more of the pressure is on you. So the women's team should be able to come out and just play loose and say, Westminster, they're trying to win this whole thing, and so are we, but they've beat us twice, and so now it's on them to figure out how to do it so a 3rd time in tournament play. And the Trailblazers, if they can go out and just have the same mentality and be loose and just have fun like they did last night on Tuesday night in the win over Western Colorado, look out. I'm on record already saying that this women's team can beat any team in this league and most in this region on any given night if things are going their way. And every once in a while, you just see a team in tournament time where everything's going their way. And last night sure felt like that for the women's team.
Yeah, I know. It was fun to watch last night. It was really, really a fun victory. I'm going to make one quick callback just in the minute left we have. I think last year, I'm going to mention the volleyball team. Last year, they were one of the top dogs in the conference. They beat Colorado Mesa 3 times in the regular season, and then they faced them once again in the playoffs at the end of the season for a 4th time, and you thought, man, they beat them 3 times already. Should be no problem. They ended up losing that game, the 4th game against Colorado Mesa. So it just is evidence to say it's tough to beat a team multiple times, especially 3 times in the same season. So watch out. It's going to be a fun matchup, and we get, it was such a fun game last week up north in Salt Lake City against the in-state rivals. We get to get it one more time here in the RMAC tournament.
Keep an eye on both games because it's the different sides of the scenario playing out. You hope for the third win for the men's team, and you hope the women's team can say that, hey, the third time's the charm. We're going to get a win, and we want to move into championship Saturday. Good show. Great show in the books. Big thanks to Jack Pagankoff for joining us on the set. We're still, again, disappointed we couldn't get Coach Gustin on the show, but we will try for another time. He's Drayson Ball. I'm Carrick Sagmiller. Have a great day.